Thank you very much. It's a great privilege to be here. I know about SpeakIn. I mean, it's one of the largest, fairest, and extremely, what you might say, extremely, what you might say, worldwide outreach about what is happening in the economy, politics, and politics, economics, and governance. So it's a great privilege for me. It has brought together a number of very seasoned corporate leaders, also the academic institutions, representatives, and professionals to discuss some important issues of national interest. Now, I've been asked to speak on India Ahead 2025 and beyond. That's my book. And you'd be glad to know that I'm not going to speak about my book, but I'm going to make a few issues. I'm going to talk about a few issues which may be of some contemporary interest, both in the political, economics, and governance areas. One great advantage, let me start by emphasizing that one great advantage that India of today has, irrespective of any political party's specific agenda, either on the right or on the left, or a mix of both, is that India's fundamentals are stronger now than ever before in terms of technology, international trade, skilled manpower, and labor. That all the fundamentals, if you think about, of what makes a country grow, what makes a country competitive, and what makes a country internationally reputed, is we have all the resources, the inputs, as it were. But we have to think about how, as we look ahead, how to realize India's full potential. Why is it that India, the largest democracy in human history, as it were, for the last 71 years that we have had this kind of a reputation for being a democratic country. In the early days, nobody gave us a chance that we will be surviving the sort of internal tensions and so on and so forth, but we did. So there are a number of issues which we still have to handle. Apart from being the world's largest democracy, we also have the largest number of poor below poverty line in the world. And we have to ask ourselves, why is it that it hasn't happened? Now, I don't want to get into that issue as to what we can do, but what I want to emphasize is that there is nothing out of reach so far as our prospects are concerned, if we have the will to execute, to implement. The problem in our society, the problem in our economy is essentially implementation. So I don't want to get into that part just now, but let me just emphasize a few issues of what you might say interest to all citizens of India as well as outside. These include, first of all, political reforms. Now you might say that we have just talked about democracy, we just talked about India's fundamentals and so on, so why political reforms? By political reforms, I mean, is that India has, if I may say so, a colonial legacy of centralized power at the center. That it is a country where most of the policy which affects our outcomes, which affects our policy, which affects our well-being, is actually at the center. There is a decentralized state power, concurrent list, and so on and so forth, but most of the policies are at the center. So one of the important initiatives that we have to take is to decentralize implementation of policies announced by center as well as different states, decentralization. And the Finance Commission does that part in terms of finances, but that's not enough for implementation part of all the policies that we have announced. We have announced a large number of policies for the well-being of people, but we haven't been able to reduce poverty to the level that we could and we should over a defined period of, say, 10 years or up to 2025. Then we have to simplify our administrative procedures. One of the great advantages today is that we have technology. And you see the direct bank transfers which have worked out all over India in terms of some subsidies, cash transfers, and so on. Now we are also considering universal basic income. So these kind of the use of technology to provide resources to the poor on the ground in urban, rural areas is something which must have a very high priority. Now today, if you look around, you'll find that the largest number of mobile phones are in India in terms of the people who use mobile phones. We have the largest number of population and second largest rather, but everybody has a mobile phone. So why is it that everybody doesn't have enough nutrition, enough food, enough health? And this is a very high priority, but this can be done, provided we simplify our complex administrative procedures and use technology as we have used in certain spheres for all tasks, for all transfers of subsidies, and integrate different subsidies into one, you might say, universal basic income or whatever it is. But there has to be a task that by 2025, we should be able to say that India has reduced poverty to single-digit level, if not altogether. I mean, you may have different parts of the country in tribal areas or something where it will be difficult to reduce the poverty levels, but to single-digit. This is an important task, and it should be done. So, and this can be done if we simplify our administrative procedures. I mean, our administrative procedures are still very cumbersome. I mentioned about the central government, but if you say central, state, and districts, which are responsible for execution of all the policies that we have announced in the rural areas or semi-urban areas, that all these are involved. And administrative system is very complex, as many of you would have felt, except in the area of technology where we have introduced direct transfers, or in terms of using the technology to get some of the access to administrative system. But even then, the number of people who can use the internet or whatever it is, which gives you the benefits, are relatively a small proportion of our population. And we have to think about what is it that we can do on the ground, at the district level, at the state level, at the central level. Then, of course, we also have the issue of judicial delays. I'm mentioning these against the background of India's great, in terms of great strength, in terms of fundamentals being very strong, but we have these issues, judicial delays. That if there is any problem, anything, you can go to the court. If there is no problem, even then you can go to the court. And then you will find that you can do what you want to do. And it will take 20 years or so at the local level for the courts to hear. Then you can go for appeals, and then you can go to Supreme Court, and so on and so forth. So there is this factor also in terms of governance, in terms of startups, in terms of everywhere. And then we have to improve, of course, the functioning of the entire administrative and the civil service. And it has to be straightforward and clear that the civil service would work in the interest of the people rather than the other way around, that they want people to work in the interest of the civil service. And this has to be changed. Then, of course, it is another very painful issue, the incentive for criminals to join politics. And this is one of the things that we don't know what to do. Some measures have been taken. But because of the judicial delays in resolving criminality, as it were, the person who is not criminal is, in terms of our constitutional guidelines, is innocent until proved guilty. So, and if you are a criminal who has been charged and is still not actually judicially criminalized or judicially sent to jail or whatever, you can still join politics. So something has to be done. Then we have to do something else, which is just very important, which was a good idea in 1983 when there was a lot of, what you might say, changing of people from one party to another and so on and so forth in one of our states. That is to modify the so-called anti-defection law. The anti-defection law, sorry, this is maybe a complicated issue, but what anti-defection law has said is that if you join a party and you defect, then you have to seek re-election. Defect means you join another party. What has happened as a result is that if you have if you have power over one constituency or two constituencies, you will have your own party. So in our parliament, 40, 50 parties would be always, you must be reading in the papers all the time that this party is going to this party has broken up with that party, they're joining to this party. So, and that parties would join somebody in the, whoever is forming the government, then they can split from there. So, those kind of problems. So we have to do something to make sure that this incentive to move around parties, that is somehow reformed. So these are many of the issues that we need to take care of in view of our strong fundamentals. And I believe that some of it can be done by accountability, and that there should be full transparency in the decision-making process and full disclosures of decisions taken by different ministries. The present government has already taken some measures like ease of doing business, GST, and the goods and services tax across the country, then some other measures also. But we need to implement, we need to enforce these on the ground, and that is taking time. So implementation is an issue. And as it happens in our country, which is, as I mentioned, the largest democracy, and I mentioned the judiciary part also, is to substantially reduce the complexity of multiple laws in force. All of you who read media, know that there is some law which is 100 years old. Not only the colonial age, but something is some 100 years old, which is still in force. So we need to simplify that procedure. And lastly, sorry, I have been talking a lot, but let me also mention that the financial sector is another priority, the reform of the financial sector and the governance system in the financial system. Because, for instance, to reduce high level of NPAs, one can ask that why was action not taken 2 years ago or 3 years ago? I mean, the NPAs are more than double digits when they are supposed to be 4 to 6% or something like that. So now you have the Solvency and Bankruptcy Act, and you have the at the moment prompt corrective action being taken, and so on and so forth. So hopefully we will see a sizable improvement in the functioning and governance structure of the public sector banks over a period of time, not too long, but still a couple of years from now. Let me not take any more of your time.